It's football season and time for the show that examines the X's and O's of the top games for the coming weekend. It's time for the Gridiron Breakdown.
It's time for the Gridiron Breakdown. I'm Jay.
And I'm Alan.
And we are here at the end of week one of the college football season. As we record this, Florida State and Virginia Tech still left to play, so we'll not be able to talk about the results of that one. But, Alan, we do have games that we picked last week we can talk about here. You went 3-3 on the picks. I went 4-2. The one difference there was you picked Miami and I picked LSU. But we both missed on Washington over Auburn. We both missed horribly on Michigan over Notre Dame. So it happens that first week, right? That's the way these things go.
It does, and I mean, I'm not ready to buy my stock on LSU. Everybody wants to tell me how great they played, and they did. Joe Burrow was only 11 for 24 with 140 yards. The passing game, while it was effective at points in time, it wasn't great, but Nick Brissett burst onto the scene, had some really good runs. They started feeding him the ball, and looks like they may have found themselves their workhorse there in Baton Rouge, Jay.
Yeah, no doubt. And while they're statistically they didn't dominate the game, they took advantage of every mistake Miami made and stopped making mistakes on their own end. We talked about it as the game was going on. You and I were texting back and forth, and both the teams were really riding a lot of emotion. And LSU seemed to get that under control while Miami just never did.
Well, and let me ask you this. It's been bemoaned the years of Mark Richt, of him losing some games he probably shouldn't. And not saying this wasn't a tough matchup for them, but Miami looked awful. It continues a trend from the 3 losses at the end of last year where they turn the ball over, they make mistakes, they don't play sound fundamental football. Like it is, we joked on Saturday, well, Texas definitely hitting back. Well, I got a feeling Miami may not be back either, Jay.
Yeah, no, there are good Twitter parody accounts out there that will answer those very questions. Is Miami back? Is LSU back? And the answer is emphatically no for both of those. I will own up to the fact that I thought FAU would be able to hang with Oklahoma. If you're going to have that happen, you have to have some things go your way, and Oklahoma absolutely did not allow anything to go FAU's way as they completely destroyed them, and as they should. But, a lot of us thought Kiffin would be able to keep it a little closer, but his team was just so overmatched in that game, it wasn't even close. Alabama has now gone from slow broiling everybody to flash frying them, so congratulations to there. I feel like that scene in Die Hard when he finally gets a machine gun, it's like now we have a quarterback too. Ho, ho, ho.
Well, now all they need is a kicker, but no, Tua came out and played fantastic, averaged over 14 yards a pass attempt. There was some sloppiness and some issues with Alabama that you expect in week one. Some really bad, unsportsmanlike penalties on the defense that I think Christian Miller still may not be able to sit down after Saturday night. I think Nick will look to get that cleaned up. But Jay, what does that mean for the rest of college football if Alabama on top of the defense, on top of the running game, if they can develop not only a vertical passing game, but a short, efficient passing game?
Yeah, that's not what the rest of the world would want to hear, for sure. So Alabama does have a good core of receivers, it looks like. So we'll see as the competition slowly but surely creeps up how well that turns out. But a great first game. Auburn and Washington was a slugfest like we thought it would be. For a while there, Washington looked like they're going to wrestle control away and take care of it. But late in the fourth quarter when they needed it, Auburn put together a drive and using a good power run game up the middle was able to score the win. And, I got to say that the battle of the two quarterbacks there lived up to the billing. Both of them played pretty well. Jake Browning from Washington played well, and Jarrett Stidham from Auburn played pretty good too against some stout defenses.
Well, I mean, those defenses harassed both quarterbacks all night, especially Jake Browning. That Auburn defensive line just created that backup left tackle as a turnstile. They were getting pressure every other play. And kudos to Browning. He stood in there and took some hits and made some great throws that had his receivers bail him out a couple of times. But the difference there that Auburn was just more physical on both sides of the ball than Washington, and over 4 quarters that played itself out.
Yeah, indeed. And as they say, you try not to read too much into one game, because there's going to be a lot between game 1 and game 2 that changes and solidifies. But overall, pretty entertaining first weekend of college football, I have to say. Alan, I'll go ahead and let you revisit your danger zone pick there with Boise State and Troy.
Well, boy, we lost that love and feeling, didn't we? Got absolutely smoked. I was having a hard time picking a game. That seemed like the most likely one. Hopefully, I'll get it back on track in week 2. I got an interesting pick for week 2.
Yeah.
But, that's what happens with the danger zone. Sometimes you fly too close to the sun on wings of pastrami, and you get burned.
There's that, and sometimes, the guy chews you out for doing the flyby when you're not supposed to. So that's how that goes. So we'll go ahead and finish our look back segment there, though, and let's get into week 2, man, because there's some good college football even this week. I know a lot of teams start, padding the schedule out at this point, but there's some good football, and we've got 3 games here we want to get into, and let's just go ahead and launch right into feature game number 1. The Clemson Tigers came out, absolutely, destroyed their cupcake opponent early on. Texas A&M did the same thing as well. And now Clemson's going all the way to College Station to take on Jimbo Fisher and those Texas A&M Aggies. So let's start getting into the matchup. What are things that you see as Clemson gets ready for A&M?
Well, I think the big thing is it became very apparent on Thursday night in that A&M game that Jimbo wants to run the ball. He wants to be able to power run. Williams had 240 yards on 20 carries and 3 touchdowns. And as a team, A&M ran for 500 yards.
Yikes.
Now, that's great when you're playing Northwestern State. And I think over time, Jimbo will be able to build that smash mouth team. Now, I don't know what he kind of hopes to accomplish in a division full of teams that like to play smash mouth football. But that's neither here nor there. Now, the question is, Jay, how is that running attack going to fare against maybe the best defensive line in college football with Lawrence and Farrell and Austin and a team that they're going to win the line of scrimmage and the point of attack? I just don't see where A&M's going to have the same success they had last week this week. Not saying they're not going to be able to run the ball and maybe get 100, 150, but they're going to have Kellen Mond really have success through the air. Now, he played very well, made some key throws, had nice percentage completions. But the real question is A&M going to be able to get the running game on track? When they're not, is Mond going to be able to bail him out of those 3rd and longs? And are they going to be able to give Mond time to make those plays?
You brought up something there, and I want to say this. The other element of that offense that I noticed was Clemson threw to the tight end a lot. That Sternberger kid had a lot of big catches, and they seemed to want to be a little more balanced on offense. Of course, they just got into running and ran over that team. The thing I took away, though, when I watched a good bit of the Texas A&M game was they actually gave up some sacks early on to Northwestern State. And I'm like, if that team, and no offense to a Northwestern State, but if they can get pressure on your quarterback, what do you think Clemson's going to do to those? They better shore that up quick. And the reason I've mentioned those things together is the tight end is usually a bailout option for a quarterback that's under pressure. But if you're getting a lot of pressure, you're probably having to leave that guy in to chip and block more, so maybe he's not open. That's going to be a problem. And Kellen Mond has come a long way from last year, but he still makes some pretty bad reads and throws. And he was doing that against a team that he was, had complete overmatch against. Clemson is going to come after them fast. So I think what you're going to see A&M do is try to move the pocket a little bit, let him throw on the run some, which he can do, and try to run to the edges more. Where they ran a lot of speed option stuff out of the pistol and everything. I think they're going to try to do some of that to get it to Travion Williams on the outside. The problem is Clemson's so darn fast sideline to sideline too. That's going to be tough to defend.
Yeah, and on the other side, A&M's defense did a decent job. They held Northwestern State to only 21 yards. From what I saw, Northwestern State wasn't really committed to trying to run the ball at all. I think they knew that was futile and really tried to throw the ball more. My question is, can Kelly Bryant throw the ball enough to move this offense during this game? Or is it going to be one of those things where we see Lawrence come in more of the passing situations? Because I got a bad feeling that if Clemson rolls with Kelly Bryant, it's going to be just a slog. Not saying that Clemson doesn't have the horses to take care of business, but unless they're able to stretch the field throwing the ball, it's going to be a real tough sledding for them.
Well, the thing that you're going to see is both of those quarterbacks look good again for Clemson as they took out Furman pretty hard. Bryant didn't do as much through the air, but he tends to run more and kind of dished it off to that cadre of running backs. Etienne and Dixon kind of carried the load. Trevor Lawrence threw it around a little bit, but he didn't throw it deep. I mean, he only threw for 130 yards. He had 3 touchdowns because he threw in red zone situations. The thing I took away from that is Clemson has a really deep receiving core, led by 12th year senior Hunter. What's his last name? Renfield. That is your worst nightmare from 2 championship games ago. But they've got a lot of good wide receivers. I don't know if Texas A&M can keep up with that enough. That's the other thing is A&M on defense didn't look particularly speedy, nor they weren't really doing anything that was exotic. Like Northwestern State just really wasn't equipped to handle anything that they were facing. So the key matchup for me is, can Texas A&M disrupt the Clemson offense, the rhythm of the Clemson offense? Because the thing about the Clemson offense is it's all about timing and rhythm, because they run a lot of gun and, it's a lot of fakes and stuff like that. And I got to say, probably not, Alan. I don't know that Texas A&M defensively does enough that's going to really disrupt what Clemson wants to do. So I don't know that they need, a quarterback to come out and, light them up at all.
I don't think they need somebody to come out and light them up. I do think they're going to have success through the air to back Clemson off the line just a little bit. Jay, I'll go ahead and throw my pick out there. Jimbo Fisher and Dabo Swinney are very familiar with each other, had a lot of good games over the years. A lot of those years, they were fairly even level as far as talent. Clemson's got more talent than A&M does. On top of that, Clemson only allowed Furman to throw the ball for 46 yards on Saturday. No, A&M's a better team, more talent. Kellen Mond has made mistakes in his career. He's still young. He still needs to grow. I think Clemson's defense gets after that A&M offense. I like Clemson to the tune of 38-13.
You and I are right along in the same lines, man. I just don't think that Texas A&M is going to be able to hold off that rush from the Clemson defense. I think Clemson is going to be able to find success where they want to with their offense and they're going to do kind of like what LSU did to Miami. They're going to be able to turn mistakes into short fields and points. And, we didn't really talk about it much, but Texas A&M's kick game is really, it's not really anything to, write home about. I mean, it's okay. It's just not great. Clemson's got speedy guys all over the field. I like Clemson 31-17 here. I think it might be close early, and in a couple of years, this might be a really interesting game. But for right now, I think Clemson's just got way too many horses on their side for me to think Texas A&M can make more of a game out of it than that. We go out west for feature game number 2, Alan. The Southern Cal Trojans, led by freshman, should be in high school still, quarterback JT Daniels, go on the road to Palo Alto to take on the Stanford Cardinal, who, man, they struggled last week. The Cardinal did not look great out of the gate. SC looked pretty good, though.
Stanford struggled with San Diego State, a team that beat them last year. Bryce Love, the all-everything running back, was held to 29 yards on 18 carries. The thing, though, Jay, is KJ Costello took a step forward in that game. Threw for over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, had the 1 pick. And, SC looked okay, Jay. But, they really struggled and gave up a lot of points to a UNLV team. The biggest thing I took out of the San Diego State game is, did you see JJ Arcega-Whiteside?
Yes,
he only had 3 touchdowns and 226 yards.
Yeah, that guy was insane, man. He was a weapon of the outside. Bryce Love couldn't get anything going. He only ran for like 39 yards on 18 carries. Costello had 332 yards passing and 226 was that one guy. So UNLV couldn't do anything for that dude.
No, but the Stanford defense played well. They only gave up 263 yards, only, 113 through the air. It was a Friday night game. I hate those Friday night games. Those are usually upset city. While Stanford didn't play its greatest game, I have to believe that they are going to be up and ready for this game. On top of that, on the flip side, Jay, USC gave up 308 yards on the ground to UNLV.
Yeah, not what you want to see. Like, if you give up 300 yards passing to an overmatched team, that's because you're beating them by, 3 scores and they're just slinging it all over the place. But to give up 300 yards on the ground, and that's not exactly like they were playing like a triple option team. UNLV just kind of runs the spread. They don't really do anything exotic. So I'd get a little concerned too. I mean, I think the line this year on the SC team was how young they were, right? And no more evident than playing the freshman quarterback. They got Ossie Edric Ware involved in the game, had 100 yards on the ground. They're going to need to lean on him. And that's the thing is I think both of these teams would prefer to lean on their running games, but they just weren't there this last weekend. So if they have to do that again, and if the defenses take those away again, I ask you, which team's going to trust their quarterback to make a play, and which one can?
Well, I mean, I think the answer is KJ Costello. I think the sheer fact that USC is going to have a kid starting his second game, and on the other hand, you have Costello, who played most of last year, who's went through another off season. I think that I would go KJ Costello. I don't know that he's an elite quarterback yet, but of the two, I take him.
I think based on experience right now, that's the smarter answer. I agree with you, but that Daniels kid's got something, and they both missed about the same number of passes and things. The difference is that Costello was going deep down the field. Daniels wasn't going deep on a lot of his shots. And he averaged over 10 completions. That's great. But Costello was getting near the 20. And that's because he had some bombs that Whiteside turned into big plays. But on the offensive side, that's going to be the matchup. Here's the thing, though. USC is known for having what generally on defense? Linebackers, right? Can you name a single linebacker on that squad right now? You know anything about any of those guys?
No.
Yeah, see, neither do I. And that's the thing is I don't think they've got the established guys on defense the way that we're used to seeing from them. On the other hand, Stanford has been that steady team that just continues to roll out really tough, plays. And when it comes down to crunch time, what Stanford's defense usually able to do? They take away the run and they disrupt your backfield. All those times they beat those great Oregon teams, that's what they were doing, was they were just disrupting things in the back. They're going to need Dylan Jackson to have a big game up front to put pressure on JT Daniels if Stanford's going to win this ball game. And that's where I think you're going to see the difference there. They're going to be able, if they can put that USC offense into third and longs and tough situations where they can tee off a little bit more, that's going to lend to that experienced offense to come back on the field. I think what happened to Bryce Love last week was just one of those weird one-game things. I think he's going to get the ball a lot more, be able to do a lot more with it. I like Stanford in this one, man, and I don't know that it's going to be a particularly great game, but I think Stanford's just going to find a way to run through this bunch. I like Stanford 21-10 in this one, Alan.
Jay, Bryce Love's one of the best backs in the country. He had an off week last week. It happens, USC gave up over 300 yards on the ground to a non-power running team. I think that the Stanford defense is the better defense. I think Stanford has the better running game and the better quarterback. I like Stanford to win this 27-17.
So 27-17. So we both go with the Cardinal here over the Trojans. Do you think that'll be a good game? That one's kind of on the late end of the day too, so that's a good one to catch in the Pac-12 dark section. Not quite after dark, but definitely a good late game. So now we're to our game of the week, Alan. The big one for the weekend: Georgia takes on South Carolina. Now, both of these teams, beat up on their opening week opponents. Jake Fromm, pretty efficient, 157 yards, 2 touchdowns, running back by committee, did the damage. Mecole Hardman had a pretty good game receiving. Jake Bentley, though, man, had 250 yards and 4 TDs, but he got Deebo Samuel back, who had rushing yards, had receiving yards, scored a ton, but also took a lot of attention so that they could get Rico Dowdle the ball and he could run for 100 yards. Georgia, South Carolina, man, people circled this one in the offseason as like, hey, that's going to be the first real test for Georgia. Tell me where the Dogs are going to face the test against South Carolina.
I think there was a point in early summer where I looked at the calendar and said, that might be one of those games. I think the big thing is South Carolina is going to have to be able to run the ball. And against Georgia over the last 2 years, that's been tough sledding for anybody. Now, I'm not saying South Carolina has to run for 200 yards or even 150, but they got to get around that 100 yards rushing, and they got to be efficient in doing it. They got to be able to keep the chains moving, keep Bentley in second and short, third and short, not get anything more than third or eight where that defense can just tee off on Bentley. Now, having Deebo Samuels, that makes a huge difference. I mean, you got to devote almost two people to that guy on every play. He is that electric and that just dynamic. Bentley's going to have to be smart with the ball. South Carolina's going to have to be able to move the ball, keep time of possession, not turn it over. And when they get in the red zone, they got to get points, Jay. They can't screw around when it comes to that. On the other side, my question is, we know what Jake Fromm is. Jake Fromm is a great quarterback. We saw a little bit of Justin Fields, and we know DeAndre Swift can run the ball. What type of resistance can this South Carolina defense give to this very, I wouldn't call it flashy, but a very efficient, kind of almost like the Washington offense? They don't do anything special, but what they do very well.
Yeah, I mean, guys like Javon Kinlaw and Keir Thomas and Brunson, they're going to have big games in the middle because Georgia likes to push you between the tackles, and then their backs are able to break something to the outside that sets up play action, puts all the pressure on your DBs. So, for South Carolina, they're going to have to find a way to plug the hole and plug the box and have good gap discipline, and not get suckered into all of the fakery, all the play action stuff, because that's when Jake Fromm hurts you. And that's when those receivers can get behind the DBs. And it all starts with being able to wrap up and tackle guys. I mean, it sounds simple, but that's just the truth. Carolina's really good at that. Like they actually play really sound defense. I think you're going to see a defensive game here. I really do. A lot of the stories, the quarterbacks, but the thing is, Fromm they're still kind of slowly but surely unspooling the leash on him and what he can do. I mean, in big games last year, he played pretty magnificently, but he's still learning. Jake Bentley, on the other hand, had a little bit of a turnover problem. Threw 12 picks last year against 18 touchdowns. And that's not terrible, but when the pressure got laid on him and he had to do it, he'd make a bad throw every now and then. Part of that was not having Samuel to lean on, but he's going to have to learn how to work around that. The guy can't be, everything. So I worry about their South Carolina's ability to keep him dry. That's the other thing. Keeping pressure off of Bentley is key to him being successful. And on the other hand, I think Fromm under pressure performs pretty good. Now, you got to see him in person a couple times. What do you think of that assessment? Am I right on that?
Oh, no, I think you're right. I think he is a cool customer. I mean, you go back and watch him in the Little League World Series as a 12-year-old. I mean, the guy's just got ice water in his veins. I mean, he answered the call every time last year. They didn't win the national championship. I don't know that I put any of that on Jake Fromm's shoulders solely. I think there's a lot of blame to go around. And unfortunately, neither team really had a test in week one, so you can kind of look at, Georgia only allowed 61 passing yards. And it's like, yeah, but it's Austin Peay. I think that Bentley has shown a propensity for turnovers in the big games, and he's got to correct that because if you turn the ball over to Georgia, they will eat your lunch.
That's the thing, and that we don't get talk about enough is what Georgia does when they get turnovers is they get points off of them, but moreover they control clock, so it's less opportunities. You know what I mean? And one thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, but Georgia has such an advantage in special teams with Rodrigo Blankenship as a kicker. I mean, that guy can hit it from all over the field. Can do real damage. Jake Hermeta, their freshman punter, not bad either. That makes a difference, in a game like this that's going to be tight. I think special teams definitely is going to play a role, and I'd give a big lean on that to Georgia.
Well, it'll be an interesting game. I think a lot of people have picked this as an upset special, which always makes me leery when a lot of people start jumping on the bandwagon. The one thing people aren't talking about, Jay, I think this game is decided by depth. starting 22, I think South Carolina matches up decently with Georgia. But I think it's once you get after those 22 starters where you're going to see the difference. And so here's the thing. Neither team had to play all its starters 4 quarters. Jay, I don't know if you've ever been to Columbia, South Carolina. The stadium's in the middle of a fairground and surrounded by asphalt.
Yep.
And the high temperature in Columbia is going to be like 95 on Saturday. It's going to be hot. I expect lots of cramping. So I think depth will play a role. I think Georgia has more depth. I think it'll be an exciting game for 3 quarters. I think Georgia pulls away at the end. I'll take Georgia 27-20.
All right, you've got Georgia 27-20, a little high scoring. I said before, I think it'll be defensive. I think South Carolina might tack one on late, but honestly, I expect Georgia to be able to pull out in the second and the third quarters and then lean on that depth late in the game and hold off what South Carolina will push out. I do think the Gamecocks are going to make a good game of it, but they're just not going to have enough. You've hit it. 22-22, that is some good matchup there, but in the 44-53 range or whatever, got to lean on Georgia there. I like the Dogs in this one, 24-17 to take out South Carolina. So we agree straight across the board in our feature games. Let's see if we agree in the lightning round games, Alan. We've got a fun slate here. We'll keep it with the SEC Big 12 Challenge here. Mississippi State travels out to Manhattan, Kansas to take on the Kansas State Wildcats. I'm going first on this one, man. I don't think K-State is going to be able to hang with the speed of Mississippi State, but don't be fooled in thinking K-State is going to roll out there the same way they did against South Dakota State this week and gack this one away. I think they keep it close because that's a weird place to play, but in the end, State's too fast. I like Mississippi State 27-20.
Well, the question is Nick Fitzgerald going to play? How much is he going to play? How much is the rust going to be there? It is a funky little road trip. Should be an interesting game. I'll take State 31-20.
All right, so we both like State. Next one's up is Georgia Tech at South Florida. Who you got in Paul Johnson versus Charlie Strong?
Well, the triple option's always unique and tough for teams to defend. South Florida has a lot of speed on defense. They're going to have to play disciplined. I like the Fighting Charlie Strongs. I think South Florida has enough on offense to really turn this into a score fest and make Tech work for it. So I like South Florida 45-35.
45-35. Well, you like South Florida a lot. Maybe last year, but I think triple option, more experience. I like Tech in their depth here, 24-21 over South Florida. UCLA, Chip Kelly, back in college football, gets to go to Norman, Oklahoma. I'm going to tell you, this one's going to get ugly fast. I like Oklahoma 45-13, just way too much depth for UCLA to be able to hang in there with them.
Well, UCLA struggled with Cincinnati and lost the opener there for Chip Kelly. Oklahoma looked fabulous. Seems like their offense is clicking. I think this is going to be a beatdown. I like it by a similar score to you. I think Oklahoma takes care of business 45-10.
Yeah, not going to be much there on that one. The next one, our buddy Matt Presto will have a lot to say about, I'm sure. Penn State travels to take on Pitt. Did the Panthers have enough to upset the Nittany Lions, who struggle with Appy State in week 1?
This game is really giving me some trouble. We thought Trace McSorley and Penn State were really going to be good this year, and they may very well. I think they're adjusting to losing Gaddis and Moorhead on the coaching staff and losing Saquon Barkley and maybe not respecting their opponents. Pitt's always kind of scrappy. Narduzzi seems to have that team going in the right direction. This is a rivalry game. Penn State's going to be ready. They're going to be disappointed by last week. I like Penn State to win 31-21.
We talked about before that depth-wise was going to make the difference in the South Carolina-Georgia State game, and I think that's true here. I don't know that Pitt has the complete depth to hang for 4 quarters there. Kenny Pickett's a really good quarterback. They got some good players on defense, but Penn State, Trace McSorley's just a stud, man. He just is, and I think he's going to be able to get it done. I like Penn State 34-24 here. Kentucky taking on the road to go take on Florida. Can they get it done for the first time in 30-plus years?
Oh, I think last year was the year for that. And while Florida's still a work in progress, I think Florida is the better team. They got more talent. It's in Gainesville. It's going to be hot. I like Florida in kind of an ugly game. I'll take it 23-17.
All right, you like it ugly, 23-17. You know what I would say? This is like fast food wars a little bit, man. You know, like I can sit here and run circles around myself to tell myself that the Wendy's burger is better than the McDonald's burger and this and that and the other. But you know what? In the end, man, the French fries at Mickey D's went out, right? They're just number one. And if you can get the ice cream machine to work, that's great too. But it doesn't have to for them to still be number one. That's how I feel about Florida, Kentucky. You're right. Last year would have been the year to do it. I don't think they can do it. I like Florida 31-21. I think they win pretty comfortably. Last one is Michigan State going on the road to take on Arizona State. I joked with a friend of mine offline that Michigan State just went ahead and had a bad game so that they could get some of that disrespect put back on them so they can live with that chip on their shoulder. And Arizona State beat a high school. So what do you think? Mark D'Antonio taking on good old Herm Edwards.
That was another one of those ugly games on Friday night. Michigan State had to score late to beat Utah State. Utah State's a scrappy team, though. I think Sparty will be ready for this. I like Michigan State 38-13.
Yeah, I think Michigan State had a bad first game. They're going to have a much better bounce-back game. I don't think Arizona State can hang in there over the long haul of the four quarters in this one. I like Michigan State 31-20 as well. Alan, we have come to that time on the show where it's time for you to buzz the tower, my man. Take us to the danger zone.
You know, Jay, I've really struggled picking a danger zone game this week. It was really hard, and I'm going to give you the most unlikely upset in all of college football. This is not Appy State over Penn State. This is a team that played about as awful as you could in their opening game, but is going to find a way to win. Going to take you Thursday night to Fort Worth, Texas. SMU plays TCU. TCU's got that big game with Ohio State looming. And while, yes, SMU looked like complete garbage on Saturday in a loss, some reason I feel like they're going to be the little engine that could and give us a close game. And I'll call for the upset, Jay. I know nobody is going to take this, but I like SMU to win 35-31.
I am literally sitting here speechless. Wow, man. I did not see that one coming at all. That would be a phenomenal upset indeed. We'll see if that tower holds up, man. That's a bold strategy, Cotton. So, but I like it. You know, that's what the danger zone is all about. Well, man, I'm ready for another weekend of college football. It's already turning into a fun season. We're only 2 weeks in and can't wait to break it all down next week with you again here on the Gridiron Breakdown. Folks, thanks for listening to the show. We appreciate it. Please review and share the show with your friends. Let us know what you think. We appreciate the support. Until next time, for Alan, I'm Jay. You've been listening to the Gridiron Breakdown.
Thank you for listening to the Gridiron Breakdown. Tune in next week for another show. The information discussed in the Gridiron Breakdown is for entertainment purposes only and is not officially connected to the NCAA or any other college football teams discussed.